was manic and half crazy, trying to quit drinking on and off. I lost a lot of weight and, kind of slipped into basically full-blown anorexia. I was just a young lady trying to figure out the world. I was working at the local hospital and I got into a car accident and I couldn't work as a nurse for probably 6 months while my back was healing. And so I just started smoking a ton of pot. And it was like, that was my sobriety. I didn't know any better, Yeah. And being a nurse in her 30s, I was mortified. Those early days, saved my life. Just being able to walk into a space where I could be honest.
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for considering donating to my podcast. When I started this page just a few months ago, I did not think I would get to this place that I'm at right now, but I cannot thank you all enough for even considering to donate to my cause. A lot of work goes into these things, whether that be getting guests, getting the expensive equipment, the editing. Oh my God, the editing takes me forever and I'm terrible at it. So it takes me even longer. But if you're here, thank you. Whatever you can afford, I would so appreciate it. It would mean the world to me. So if you want to hear these recovery stories, keep coming, then please consider donating. It would mean just the absolute the world to me. So thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. And thank you for being a part of my journey. I really don't know what else to say besides thank you. And be on the lookout for many, many more episodes coming soon. Thank you, everybody.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another great episode of the Willpower Podcast. Today, I am so thrilled and thankful to have a new friend come on my show. Her name is Kate Vitale. Am I saying that correct?
Vitella.
I said it right the first time and I messed it up the second time. What is that all about, right? So Kate Vitella, she's been a nurse for how many years now?
24.
24 years she's been a nurse. Yeah. And in 2018, you had a really bad slip up, correct?
Oh, you can call it that, a slip up. I like that reframe.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So let's get into it, Kate. So tell us a bit about yourself, where you're from, and what's your story?
Yeah. So I'm in Olympia, Washington in the Pacific Northwest near Seattle. And let's see. Oh, gosh. How much time do we have?
However much time you need.
I'm married. I'm a stepmom to 3 boys and a rescue dog named Oscar who scratches and claws all over me on accident. So I look like a battered wife, but that's not funny actually. But
no, I have 2 dogs myself in the other room, so hopefully they stay off the podcast today.
I know I put a sign on my door like, please someone hold the dog.
No dogs allowed.
Yeah, so I got sober in 2018 and really it was probably a decade of debauchery leading up to it, but I came across a point in my drinking and all the debauchery where I say I didn't have a choice, and I'm starting to kind of reframe that as I chose. I really did. And so yeah, I became an RN at 22, I think. And so, yeah, I just turned 46. And I say that I learned how to be an adult at the same time I learned how to be an RN, a registered nurse, because I was so young and I was a person who got married really young, bought my first house, was really hustling, trying to be all the things at the age of 22, and I'm working at this local hospital. And of course, I was a hard charger, so I took the hardest nursing job possible on an ICU step-down unit, and I did a residency program and really wanted to get in with the most acute, like ICU type settings. And so I did that for 7 years. And, through those years, when I look back, of course, hindsight is so clear, but during the time I was just a young lady trying to figure out the world. I so desperately wanted to be successful as a nurse because it was kind of my ticket out of a small town, and it was my independence, and, my mom's a nurse. And so I wanted to be successful so bad. I talk about this. I have my own podcast and I talk about how much I hustled for my worth and how much I based my entire existence on how much I could accomplish. Right. So yeah. And I never drank alcohol in my high school years or in college. I actually didn't
Really?
really start drinking until around the age of 25. Um, so
Now, why do you think that was? Why? Because that's unusual, honestly. Most stories you hear
yeah,
are people drinking underage and
yeah,
then adapting a relationship with it way too early and then problems
yeah.
much later, right? So it's interesting in your end because you picked it up at 25. So what was going on before that?
Well, in high school and in college, like I said, I was a person who really I was a perfectionist. I wanted to play by all the rules. I wanted to get the good grades, do the right thing, be the good girl, make everyone proud of me. And my friends were athletes and it just wasn't on our radar, to party or to imbibe. It just wasn't. And so I never I really never picked up and I never thought about it. If I did think about it, it was like, well, who would do that? Who would turn to something like that? And I think part of it was growing up. We moved a lot when I was a kid, and I spent a lot of time in survival mode, really trying to be the new girl and succeed and achieve. And it's like, I didn't have time for that. I didn't have time to be hungover, and I didn't have any margins of error in my head to make any
Right.
mistakes. Right. And that is a pretty good testament to the mindset that I was in. Like, I'm a young person who is so obsessed with being perfect or the perception of being good, doing the right
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. Well, Kate, you and I are very alike in that regard because I was the same way. I was very much a people. I'm not saying that you were a people pleaser, but
Yeah.
I'm definitely a people pleaser, and that's to a fault
Yeah.
in most cases of my life. So I had that built up people pleasing, tenacity going on my whole life, and I always wanted to be a do gooder.
Yeah.
But then there was that side of me that had that wild party side. But that's why I picked up drinking much earlier. But so what happened at 25 that all of a sudden you shifted gears?
Yeah. That was around the time, work started to get extremely stressful. And the way that my story is kind of screwed up, but I was working at the local hospital and I got into a car accident and
Oh,
I
jeez.
couldn't work as a nurse for probably 6 months while my back was healing. And it really started with this measure of self-worth. Like, if I'm not working and contributing to society and being the perfect wife and cleaning my house and going for a run and working out and doing all the things, thousands of push-ups and whatever my little psycho brain thought was important at the time, then I wasn't even worth food. And so I just kind of quit eating. And I lost a lot of weight and, kind of slipped into basically full-blown anorexia. It was like I had to punish myself in some way, and I think when you're starving, someone introduces a glass of wine and it's fermented grapes and it's like, oh, this was the elixir of calm and relaxation for such a little nervous Nelly. And it was also, the sugar. And I really believe my eating disorder and my drinking kind of evolved right around the same time. And so my friends taught me how to order a glass of wine at a restaurant. Like, I didn't even know. I didn't know how to read the wine menu. I didn't know anything. And so they, my nurse friends taught me, like, oh, this is what you do, and again, like I said, I was learning to be an adult. And so I thought it was fancy to have a glass of wine and to go out to these little classy bars and to just, represent my adult self. And, coupled with the fact that and of course, trying to hide, anorexia and body dysmorphia. I was really trying to hide all that. And it just, it hit me so hard. And I
Mm.
think around that age, it was like the culmination of everything compounding in my life where it was like, I need a solution. Right.
Mm.
And alcohol
Yeah.
seemed like, oh, the elixir of relief for a
Mhm.
nervous mind, a busy mind.
Yeah. That's so true, Kate. I was the same exact way. I mean, for me, alcohol really was the
Yeah.
solution because I had so many issues. I had low self-worth. I wasn't satisfied with my professional life as a teacher. I was doing all these things on paper that looked really
Mhm.
good, but deep down, I was suffering. So when I started using alcohol as a self-medicating, tool in my toolbox, that's when things really started to get out of control because it really was a solution. However, that next morning, man, would those issues pile up on and stack on one on top of another. So tell me about that. So after you all of a sudden had this breaking point, you're losing weight, you had some eating issues. What like can you explain and elaborate a little further into what happened thereafter?
Yeah, so I started drinking fairly regularly, like on the nights I wasn't working. Um, and then that turned into daily drinking through my late 20s. And of course, I discovered the bar scene. And this was a person who never got a lot of male attention in high school. This was me. I'm the one.
Yeah, the
And so asking for,
sometimes it's nice to it is actually a very helpful too. It's almost like distance
I
yourself from
know.
your self. Like I always call myself old Will when I'm referencing anything before 2020, 30. I always reference old
Yeah.
Will was that way. Old Will got, messed up but every single night of the week. But yeah, I understand what you're saying with that.
Yeah, yeah, asking for a friend. No, I was a girl in high school that didn't get a lot of male attention and didn't get a lot of attention overall, and so I I felt like that was kind of like my breakout point of like late 20s bar scene. Of course I'm anorexic. I get a boob job. I mean, sorry that you're a man and I have to, tell you these things, but it's an integral part of my story in
It's
like
okay.
the
You're not
woman
the only one.
experience to,
Yeah, yeah.
feel invisible. And then all of a sudden, oh, I'm getting all this male attention and, I'm drinking and I'm sophisticated and I've lost some weight, which was not healthy. It was kind of gross. I look like a bobblehead. And I left my marriage because that's what we do when we decide that we've discovered the bar scene. And I just became this person who was a hard partier, lived at the bars, going out all the time. By my, late 20s into early 30s, I was a daily drinker. It was like, oh, this is the thing. And I really identified as like this big wino, you know. I joke that I used to go to parties in LA and everyone had nicknames and mine was Kate Wine Slut. And it's just
Wow.
like it just became my identity. And
Mhm.
and I felt like kind of this was a rebellious phase. Like I didn't really rebel in high school or college. When you play by the rules and you're kind of stifled and you live your life like really quiet, and then all of a sudden, you are introduced to alcohol. It's like, oh, I get to be bad now. And I
Mhm.
also think becoming a nurse so young and going through the training to then in nursing school is brutal, right? It's not fun. It's not a fun college experience. It's a brutal sort of a
Yeah.
technical program with clinicals
It's
and
intense though. I know, yeah.
yeah,
I
it's
know a ton of
no
people
joke.
it can be very difficult, yeah.
Yeah. And so throughout that time in my life, it was like I had to stay focused and I had to do the right things. And it's funny because I was really careful. I never got into drugs because I was like, well, I'm a nurse. We can't do drugs. But
Yeah.
we can drink wine.
But alcohol is
Yes.
alcohol because it's legal,
Oh,
right? It's
totally.
so everyone's drink, so,
Yes.
whatever, no big deal. Even though it's probably, suffice to say,
Worse.
probably one of the most worst drugs that there is, if not the worst, honestly, as 50% of people who commit, um, domestic abuse, one person's either drunk or the person, abuser or the abused. It's like, it's crazy. Our car accidents, you name it. It's insane the amount of destruction alcohol causes in its tornado-like path,
Yeah.
you know? So what? So now, so that's really interesting. So you were almost like rebelling in the sense that okay, I'm 25. I'm leaving. You left your husband. I mean, a lot is going on in your life. A lot is going on in your life, right? Is that safe to say? So tell me a little bit about that period, and then what was the wake up call, or was there a rock bottom maybe?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I got sober at 36. No, 38. 38. 36, I got a DUI, but that wasn't my wake up call. You know, so throughout my 30s, of course, drinking heavily, consequence after consequence of blackouts and, you know, hangovers like nobody's business, and just making a fool of myself at parties, and showing up late to work. I had transitioned from nursing into pharmaceutical sales, so I was working in more of a professional setting, and lots of partying, some highbrow partying and some lowbrow partying, and so I got a DUI.
I'm just curious, what's the difference between highbrow and lowbrow
Oh, I'm
partying?
just joking, but it's mostly like, you know, I call it like white collar, like, everyone's a professional, educated, you're at a country club drinking
So a cocaine
wine,
party.
and well, yeah, really. And it's like we're all buried in the glass and hiding that
Mhm,
the version of ourselves. You can church it up, right? You can church up
mhm.
drinking to be this sophisticated
Oh, you
thing.
definitely can search it up. Yeah, look at the Kentucky
Oh,
Derby. I
yeah.
mean, that place is like,
Yes.
the 1920s are all flower hats, but they're shit-faced. If
Yes.
you look past those people in those hats, like the pit, they call it, it's just madness of drunkenness. Yeah.
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 Some of the drunkest debaucheries I've ever gotten into were Kentucky Derby parties and wine tasting tours, where a group of, high class individuals went on a wine tour, and we just went tasting, and oh my God, it was the total shit show. I mean, so yeah, like there were churched up versions of the drinking, and then there were meeting the dirty guy at the dirty bar and drinking the dirty wine. I mean, there, it was like,
Yeah.
and I love, there's a quote in the recovery circles, and it was in a quit lit book, and for the life of me, I can't remember who said it, but she basically said I was deteriorating faster than I could lower my standards.
Wow. That's actually very
Yeah.
poetic. I mean, it's tragically poetic, right?
And that was me. It was like, I had
Mm,
high standard. I was Kentucky Derby at first, and then after that, I was just Derby party of one.
mm.
It was so bad.
They're the only one. Yeah, you're the only one going to your own derby party at that point.
It was so
Uh, yeah. So what else? So okay, so you were this person, and then what was the like, what happened? When did it eventually all of a sudden become unbearable?
Yeah. So, there's so many pieces of my story, but um, I essentially, let's see, 37-ish, yeah, around 37, my drinking had gotten so bad. I had already gotten a DUI, so it was on my family's radar. It was like, oh, okay, we see now she has a problem. And my family had done the typical like family intervention. They had talked to me several times like, Kate, we think you have a drinking problem. Of course, nobody in my family knew anything about addiction, and nobody had struggled, and so it was a foreign conversation with cliched, awkward things that people heard on TV, and we didn't know how to approach it. I can look back with some grace, but it was basically the cat was out of the bag by the time I was around 37. And I was still trying to clean up the mess from the DUI. I had the blow and go interlock device in my car, in my BMW, because I was a, white collar drunk. And my
You
friend,
had the device in your car because of the DUI, the
yes,
one you have to
yep,
blow into, and then the car will start, right?
yes. Which
Yeah.
oftentimes
Okay.
I couldn't start my car because it's so sensitive that even if you drank the night before, that it
Mhm.
like would pick up on, alcohol sugars, and it wouldn't start. And so it was a
No, what how much I mean, I'm sorry to disrupt your story there, but what is the percentage of alcohol in your system to have to get that system, that little device put in?
yeah. Well, in Washington state, even if you get
Yeah, they I'm
one DUI, you get one of those installed.
really?
Yeah, it's not a
Wow.
percentage. Well, yeah, I don't think it's a percentage, although my DUI, I did blow like double the legal limit. But in Washington, even if it's your first DUI, you get one of those interlock devices. So that's just the way the law works. And
Yeah.
I was pulled over by a state trooper, and I felt like I kind of got a harsh punishment, even though I deserved it. I was speeding at like 2 a.m.
Mhm.
I didn't crash my car or anything. I was coming home from a concert in Portland, and I was speeding on this like old highway. It was probably 1 a.m. And I got pulled over for that. And yeah, so they don't play around in Washington. So I had
Yeah,
to
they
have that
don't play
device
around.
in my car for a year. And they're very expensive and they're a complete pain in the ass. Like they're so touchy, like, you know, and it beeps while you're driving. So if you don't blow properly while you're driving or what have you, it will like make you pull over and your car will shut off. So it really kind of messes you up. So sometimes I argue when people get a DUI, if they're on the fence, it kind of pushes you over the edge with your mental health because it adds so much burden to your life. It's like,
Oh, okay. I've had it. I got one in college, so I know. I blew point two something, 0.20, which is double the legal limit. So, and I just moved my car from literally 60 feet down the road. I was in college. I just didn't want to get a parking ticket. Granted, I should have been driving, but it messes your life up. I had to go to like the really expensive camp, the Amethyst Foundation, I think it was called. I had to do the rehab. I mean, it it's a lot, like so much money or dignity
mhm.
or, those kind of like the mental health aspect is a really huge part of it. I almost forgot about how destroying that was to my ego and my self-worth. Yeah.
Yeah, and being a nurse in her 30s, I mean, I was
Yeah.
mortified. And then, like
Hmm.
I said, the cat was out of the bag. It was like anything I tried to minimize about my drinking, no one's believing me now. And so my some of my nurse friends talk to me about, well, you should just smoke pot because it's easier to recover from. You don't have a hangover, and pot's legal in Washington state now. And why are you drinking so much when you could just smoke marijuana? You can
Uh,
tell I don't smoke pot because I called it marijuana. Like I don't even have a cool nickname for it. Like I'm like THC. And so I really made some efforts to quit drinking on my own during that time. Not going to any meetings. I didn't know anybody sober. I wasn't reaching out to anybody. I just tried to cold turkey it. And I tried to smoke marijuana during that phase. Me. I tried to smoke the devil's lettuce during that time to get through the brutal detox and transition of going cold turkey. And nurses, of course, are not allowed to imbibe in THC. It's not federally legal. So if you're a first responder or, police officer, what have you, you're legally not supposed to. So I was working as a home health nurse, and where you drive to various locations, people's houses, you do wound care, ostomy care, whatever, their post-surgery, what have you. And I was so proud of myself because I had white knuckled my way to 6 months sober. And I really didn't tell anybody. And I was like, I got this. I'm doing this. I mean, it was day by day. And I talk about white knuckling. I mean, I was like,
and then,
it. And so I just started smoking a ton of pot. And it was like, that was my sobriety. I didn't know any better, So funny. A nurse of that tenure, I didn't know any better. And so I got in an auto accident on a way to see a patient, and my work was like, well, we need to do an incident report because this is an on the job incident. So of course there's a process, and they wanted me to provide a urine specimen. And they said, well, just come into the office, give us a urine specimen, and, we'll run it through the lab. And I panicked because I knew I
yeah,
was going to
of
pop
course.
pot,
Yeah.
and I knew I was going to get in trouble. And so again, my nurse friends, I don't mean to blame this on the nursing community, but all my friends are nurses. And so, of course, I take any advice they have. They're like, oh, you just go to one of those smoke shops and you buy artificial pee and then you warm it up and you just use that to pass the test. I mean, we all smoke weed. That's just what you do. I was like, oh, okay, well, that works.
Okay.
And
Oh, that's it.
I'm like,
Buy some sick
yeah,
tea.
like I have no recovery mindset at this point. Like I have no insight into, oh, maybe this should be a freaking
Yeah.
wake up call. No. So I'm like, well, off to get fake pee I go. I mean, that's the next
The
reasonable.
next launch step yeah, in this, in just figuring my life out. Let me just get some fake
Yeah,
tea.
that's obviously the next reasonable thing to do. And so,
Mm.
long story short, I went in to provide a UA or a urine specimen, and I dropped the fake pee on the floor. in front of the person collecting my specimen.
No, you
I
didn't. You dropped the fake pee. That's like everyone's worst nightmare when that
Yep,
happens, right?
yep.
Like, what if I spill?
And my husband and I still laugh about this to this day. It's not funny, but when I was getting ready to go in to do it, I was wearing like this baggy pair of scrubs, and he was like, "You're gonna drop that in those underwear and those scrubs. You're dropping that." And I was like, "No, I'm not. I got this. I'll just put it down in here and I'll hike the scrubs up and tie them really tight." Oh no, I dropped it. And it rolled underneath the bathroom stall, and the woman collecting the specimen was out there, and she's like, "What is this?" And I just froze. And I came out of the bathroom, started hysterically crying. I was like, "It's fake pee." Just
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I should not be laughing, but it is a very come on. Like it is a very funny
yeah.
story. At the time, though,
Uh-uh.
not a very.
It was not funny because, I was kind of at the end of my rope. I had already had my family talk to me. I had already gotten a DUI. I secretly was trying to stay sober. I knew deep in my gut, like, something's got to change. And then here I go and make another huge mistake. Right. And so,
Yeah, that's oh my gosh. What did the nurse how did she react? Like, how does, like I feel like if I was the nurse in that situation, I'd be like, "Oh, I don't want her." This poor girl, I would feel so terrible about having to put this poor girl back, away because that person's gonna get in trouble
yeah,
after, right? But that's their job, right?
for
To make
sure.
sure that
Yeah. And
yeah, people
so
aren't
I got terminated on the spot. Like, I literally got escorted out to the curb, and they were like, "You need to go. You're done." And so fired from my job. Of course, my car, because I'd been in a car accident, was totaled. And so I had no car, no job. My husband has to come pick me up. And I, of course, then he's like, "What happened?" And I'm like, "I dropped it." And he's like, "I told you." Again, this is why we laugh about it.
funny
Yeah,
after the fact.
only
Like, yeah,
funny in hindsight.
that's
We laugh about it now. But
Mhm.
anyway, I got reported to the nursing commission for tampering with a drug screen, which is a
Mm.
huge offense. And
Is that like a misdemeanor? Yeah, is
it's
that a
not
really
a
bad
legal offense, but for the state board of nursing, it's grounds for losing your license.
Sure. Yeah,
So,
I bet.
and at that point, I
Mm.
had been an RN for 17 years. So it wasn't, I wasn't new in this game. And I had like a flawless, record in nursing. I had never had anything on my license, no complaints, no issues. Um, and so I slipped into a really deep depression, and the state is slow to process things. And so it kind of sat in limbo for a while, and I couldn't work. And I just got to the lowest of low. And trigger warning for your audience. This is kind of a brutal part, but my family actually had me committed to a psychiatric facility because I was suicidal.
Wow.
And I was manic and half crazy, trying to quit drinking on and off, just all of it combined, right? This giant life nightmare on top of the fact that deep in my gut, I knew I was kind of screwed. Like, I didn't know how to quit. I didn't know what to do.
Yeah, and so you were 6 months sober up until all this happened?
Well,
Would
Cali
you say?
sober.
Cali sober, yeah, Cali sober. Um, but that's still you weren't
Yeah.
drinking, right? Up until and you were white knuckling it then too,
Hmm.
you were saying,
Hmm.
right? So you had no support, right? So I'm just bringing these points out because I tried to do that too, and I failed miserably my first stint at sobriety because I just had no support. I had no accountability. I wasn't in the mind frame or I wasn't in like that welcoming mind frame of sobriety. I was still kind of, pushing it away, unfortunately. And then I relapsed big time when a huge issue would arise, right? So, okay, so this happens, you lose your license, like, now what? I mean, what was that like when you had to be put into a psychiatric facility?
Oh my gosh, I was locked up for 10 days, and I say locked up because it is an involuntary commitment and you are locked in.
Mhm.
And
It's like a section 22 or something like that? No.
what's that?
Mm. Mm. It's like a section something, like section 9 or something. I don't know what the terminology is, but when someone is like not safe to themselves, they have to
Yeah.
be put someplace that yeah, something like that, right?
It's a civil commitment. Some people, they like on rap songs, they throw around the term 5150. That
That's
might be what you're
yeah,
thinking
that's
of.
it. That's what I'm thinking of. What did I say? It's like, I just thought of like a band name from when I was like in middle school or something. I don't know what the hell that was. Anyways, yeah, sorry to actually sidetrack you there, but yeah. So what was that like? Seriously.
Scary and
Yeah.
heartbreaking and confusing and wandering the halls in spice-colored scrubs. And I remember telling the nurses, they were like, "Oh, I'm a nurse." And they were like, "Yeah, you are. Okay. Okay, little Katie.
hmm
You go back to
hmm
your back to your
I can't.
lockdown."
You wouldn't believe. So when because I was a teacher, during this entire time, I was trying to drink myself to death too. So when I was in the hospital, this is much much later, right before I had to get a liver transplant. That's how bad it was. I remember just rifling off like, I'm a teacher. I shouldn't be
Yeah.
here. Like I was like saying those kind of things just to
Yes.
justify my actions or whatever, like as if they would give a shit, like, yeah, good man. Like I'm a nurse and like whatever. Like what is this like trying to morally superior or something? It looks like you're almost dead because of your drinking. So yeah, I do remember trying to grasp at straws with my dignity towards the very end. So tell me about when you got out, like when did you start to figure out when did life get better for you?
Yeah. Um, when I got out, long story short, I ended up getting connected to a psychiatric nurse practitioner who gave me hope that there was a way out of the situation I was
That's
in. And my parents hired an attorney for me, and I was introduced to the idea that I could go through a monitoring program for nurses with substance use issues and save my license. But to do that, of course, I would have to be sober and I would have to commit to this monitoring program. And part of me was so happy to surrender.
mm,
There was pieces in the literature about the monitoring program, whereas I realized I'd be meeting with other nurses once a week in a support group. And something
sure.
about that was like, "Oh, thank God. Like, I
Yeah.
need help."
Like-minded people.
My
Yeah.
people. Yes.
Your people.
And so
Mhm.
I went ahead and entered into that program, which required all kinds of things, outpatient treatment, random UAs, support groups. Plus, you had to go to meetings on your own on the outside, find a meeting. And this is 2018. And so, I'm like, well, I guess I better find some meetings somewhere. And I read the book The Recovering by Leslie Jameson. It was like I liked the cover, so I bought it at Barnes and Noble, knowing that I'm
Mm.
going to go on this journey. And I remember sitting on my front doorstep, just being completely immersed in this book and reading page after page. And I was so impressed by her ability to talk through all the rigors of getting sober. And she's this Ivy League graduate who is this beautiful writer. And I remember thinking, who am I to think I'm too good to walk into an AA meeting? Like, no one gives a
Yeah.
fuck that I'm a nurse. No one gives a fuck
Yes.
about anything. I'm the same
Mm-mm.
drunk as all these people. I'm the same. And I closed the book and I found a local AA meeting and I went. And I never looked back. And I went to AA every day, sometimes twice a day for 2.5 years until the pandemic hit and the world shut down.
Mhm.
But those early days, saved my life. Just being able to walk into a space where I could be honest.
Yeah. Now that AA meeting the first one you went to, that wasn't the support group you're talking about. That's something entirely different, right?
Yeah, I
With the
also,
nurses?
on top of that, met every Tuesday with a group of nurses who were also in the monitoring program. They had done various things, nursing crimes, diverted drugs, showed up to work drunk, various issues that had landed them in the program. So I met with them every Tuesday for, gosh, 5 years. Yeah,
Wow. Really?
yeah. And it was
Wow.
such an incredible group of nurses as well. I went in there thinking, "Oh, I'm so much better than these people. I didn't steal Vicodin," you know. Of course, I was not better at all. And they were so amazing. Like all of them were experienced nurses with really incredible stories. And I started to see how one could easily slip into that pattern and then get stuck, right? We kind of slide into addiction slowly and then we get stuck there. And that was my first introduction to the concept of, wow, really smart people who have done amazing things in this world, they got trapped, and
Yeah.
it doesn't mean they're bad people. It just means they're
Kate,
stuck.
you, you, you know what's so interesting about you just saying that? Like, I've never thought of that, which is such a strange thing to say out loud, but I never felt like that was me. But now I'm thinking back in my life, and from the ages of 33 to 34, 35, and then from 35 to 36 is when I was actually actively trying to commit suicide by drugging myself to death. But from 35 to 30, 33, 35-ish, I got into this pattern of drinking every single day to remedy my anxiety, right? And my low self-worth. And um you're right, like I got into such a pattern that I got stuck. Like I was like I felt trapped,
Yeah.
like, oh no, I like Jacob's ladder, like I went through it and now here I am looking on the other end of it like, oh no, I went in too deep in the deep end, right? Like now I don't know how to swim out here. That's how I felt. And that's really cool that when you said stuck, that self-realization actually just kind of really hit home to me. So thank you for sharing that. So when you went to AA for the first time, what was that experience like for you?
Crowded and hot and sticky and crazy, and I was in this community
Yeah.
center with wall-to-wall people. Smelled like smoke and grime, and someone shared a story about getting a DUI in the child drop-off circle of school on pure mouthwash. And any other mindset I would, or headspace I would have been like, oh, this is ridiculous. Like, I don't belong here. But after what I had been through and this new mindset of, oh yeah, I belong here, it was like none of it bothered me. And I just sat there thinking, yeah, these are my people. I'm right where I need to be. I'm home. And it was
Yeah.
really freeing to just say out loud, I'm Kate. I'm an alcoholic. And this is my
Yeah.
story. And I don't go to AA anymore. I've been sober 7.5 years now. And
Congratulations. That's amazing.
thank you. And my sobriety has definitely shifted and pivoted and turned in various ways, and what I, find to be helpful in my recovery. But in those early days, walking into a meeting saved my life. And so I don't, like I said, I don't go to AA now. And I coach clients for a living, but I never disparage AA because there's so much good to it if you're willing and open. And I think the 12 steps in the big book of AA is an amazing spiritual journey, and it's worth doing if you're open to it. I fully recognize a lot of people aren't, especially women or people of color, other marginalized groups. And so,
Sorry about that, everybody. We're back. Kate, you were talking about AA and not disparaging it.
yeah, I coach women in sobriety now, and obviously they're coaching with me. They're not going to AA. They're going to some meetings or support groups online. But I never wanted it to be positioned like it's me versus AA. It's whatever is helpful for you. In fact, some of my clients have gone to AA at the same time they've seen me. I recommend to go to meetings, get a support group somewhere, anywhere. It doesn't matter what it is. And it just, where I'm at in my journey, calling myself an alcoholic and sitting in those rooms just doesn't resonate with me. It just, and
Yeah.
so I just wanted to be clear on that part.
Yeah. And Kate, I am with you in a lot of those points that you just made. So for me, AA, you're right, at the very beginning was very, very helpful. When I started to buy into AA, that's when it actually started helping. I started listening. I started kind of contributing more, voicing my thoughts, sharing more. That's when I started seeing benefits from it. But yeah, you know what? You're right. Like I honestly, I don't adhere to AA. I love that AA is so widely accessible. Like, so for instance, the other day I was with my wife and it was just one of those bad days. I had a ton of cravings. Luckily we don't keep alcohol in our home, but it was one of those weird, really oddly strange, difficult days. I'm in between jobs right now. I'm going on job interviews and it's just really stressful and stuff. So it's like that feeling of, oh my God, like I have to jump into a meeting. I just have to. And it was like very like calm. I was like, hey hon, like I'm gonna go to a meeting. Okay, I'll be right back. I know it's been a year since I've gone to one, but I'm just gonna go casually go to a meeting. So I actually didn't end up going, but we ended up cooking and talking, and then that was like enough to kind of subside the craving. But but I just love that it still is there. And no matter where on the meetings app, I can just go click, see where my location is and where the next nearest meeting is. That's just like a beautiful concept overall.
Mhm.
Cause I mean, no one's getting paid to do and right. I mean, like some people I'm sure are benefiting from it, but no, not really, not really. I mean, AA is very bare bones. It's like crappy coffee. Maybe someone's nice enough to bring a couple of munchkins or something like that. And then, and then people just, share and listen. And that's beautiful. But there are some components to AA that we have different uh, beliefs. I
Yeah.
guess you would say it that way. Yeah.
Yeah. I
Hmm.
mean, a couple years in, and the universe works in magical ways because right around the time that the world closed down in 2020, I think I was about well, obviously I was 2 years sober. Um, I was also at this place in my sobriety where I knew I was going to stay sober no matter what, but I was unfulfilled in a lot of ways. I had a lot of questions about addiction science. And, as a nurse, I, I wasn't fully buying into all the truisms of AA and all the, I mean, the big book is from the 1930s. So we're passing around a lot of folklore essentially. And yes, there's a lot of very good to it, but I had questions
Folklore.
about today's, today's research and where we are today. And so when the world closed down and the internet blew up, the sober Instagram and all these
Sure did.
online communities started popping up that were kind of open forum. You could talk about anything. You could talk about, books by Brene Brown. You could talk about neuroplasticity or cognitive behavioral therapy or whatever it is, And I started going to those online groups. I joined the Luckiest Club and I joined Sober Mom Squad, which is no longer a entity anymore. But it was a perfect time in my recovery when I needed a pivot and I needed different, a different scene and more inclusive messaging. And I needed to start doing my own research and really kind of develop my own understanding. And it really, I mean, I feel like that's when my sobriety exploded.
So around 2020.
Yep. Yep. Around that
Like,
time, I think I came out as sober on Instagram. I didn't even really use Instagram prior to that, but I started posting like, "Hey, I'm sober. I'm a nurse. This is my story." And I started getting really involved in the sober community and I started meeting people and networking and guesting on podcasts, and it was like I'm out loud sober and I'm not going back.
yes. And it's so freeing, isn't it, when you voice your vulnerabilities to the masses? I mean, it really is for me. Like every single time I've said this often on my show, it's every single time I have a new guest on like yourself, Kate, and you're very vulnerable and honest and real. That's like the connection that I needed today to keep me sober. So like
Mhm.
in a sense that my show actually is a form of AA to me, in that we're talking about our issues. We're talking about our past and how we overcame them and giving hope and inspiration, hopefully, to many others, listening and watching. So thank you for sharing that. So you started your channel and your page. I mean, your first, I know, was it at Kate Vatella? Was that what it was? Yeah.
Yeah, I just started my Instagram at, my own personal page became a recovery page and then stuff about fashion and all the other things I liked. But
Mm.
up until just about 3 days ago, I don't know, maybe a week ago, that was where my entire business and everything started thriving. But I recently switched and started a new a sober Instagram page called Rewired Sober, because I felt like it was time to separate my personal and my
Yeah,
business.
that was gonna be my question. I was gonna say, I'm like, you were doing very well on your personal brand. So I was curious as to why you pivoted to, well, not pivoted, but maybe just added on to your repertoire of identities when it comes to your social media presence. So you felt the urge, or you wanted to willingly segue into this area and focus on it. Why was that?
Well, I have a coaching business and I have a podcast, and I felt like, first of all, I wanted a sober name on my Instagram so I was easier to find.
Sure.
And my podcast is called You've Been Selected, which is a reference to the nurse monitoring program I was in. But again, that's hard to find as a sobriety podcast. So I'm in the process of changing the podcast name to Rewired Sober.
Okay.
Because of the coaching that I do, and we do a lot of verbal processing and sort of similar to cognitive behavioral therapy. Long story short, but this other thing happened to me recently, and this is a testament to how we never stop growing and changing in recovery, is I realized I was making my business about me. I was kind of searching for vanity metrics. I was posting a lot about look at me, look at me. Um, I got down this path where I didn't like what I was building. And I certainly wasn't attracting the right audience. I mean, I started to get tons of men and people wanting to comment on my physical appearance or my lifestyle choices or my politics or, just inappropriate stuff. And
Yeah.
part of my journey is that I've written bits of a fashion blog for an online magazine, The Sober Curator. And so I post a lot about fashion, and I'm integrated into our fashion community here in the Seattle area. And I had a lot of those followers on my Instagram account that had nothing to do with sobriety. The whole
Sure.
fashion world is on there,
Mhm.
models, designers. I did some modeling myself. And so it just became this like messy place where I was talking about various things and I had different camps of followers. And I really felt the need to just streamline it and make an Instagram page that wasn't about me. I mean, come on, folks. No one gives a shit about Kate Vitella.
I mean, that's not true. That part I disagree with. But I do understand where you're coming from in the sense that the recovery community, first and foremost, the foundation of it should be from a serving perspective,
Yeah.
not a self-serving perspective, correct? And I'm not gonna lie, there are times in my own channel, my own page, where I will find myself falling into those, kind of ego-driven places, right? Because everyone's human. We all kind of crave that in some way or another. But then I'm lucky enough that I have a wife that's very um, helpful in the sense that if she sees me on my bullshit, she'll call me on it, and she thinks that I'm acting a little too pretentious, I guess would be the right word. Then she's pretty good at being like, yeah, you need to get back to your roots. You need to get back to your roots, and that's very helpful to have someone always kind of keeping me in check because that's what this is. That's what the name of the game is. Like we're people that were once and will forever have some kind of issue with this alcohol, and to share our stories, to share our vulnerabilities openly and honestly to others. That is the recipe for true success for people who feel that there's all hope is lost, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's wonderful that you're doing that. Now, what are you excited about when you're now segueing back into this area of mental health?
Yeah, I really like the concept of neuroplasticity and rewiring. I shouldn't say concept, is more like a, medical phenomenon, but I talk about it a lot in my one-on-one coaching. I'm a nurse coach, which most people don't even know what that is. And that's, if you are a registered nurse, you can go through a coaching program that's actually affiliated with your license. And it's sort of a
Oh,
rigorous
cool.
program just for registered nurses. So
Sure.
you're not getting some bullshit internet coach that has a coaching certificate for $19.99, right?
Yeah, right.
We're very educated and practiced,
And
and
yeah,
so
and you've been a nurse for 2 decades. I mean, you have the knowledge
yeah,
that most don't. So that's very helpful to many, many others out there.
yeah, and thank you for that. And in my one-on-one practice, I talk a lot about rewiring our brain, and we do that through a lot of verbal processing and reframing, you know, thought patterns that we get stuck in, and with my clients, they do a lot of talking and I do a lot of listening, but I'll certainly jump in when I catch them in a limiting belief or, repeating a cognitive bias that they're stuck in. We reframe, we talk through it, we journal. I encourage clients to go to meetings. And I love the hope in the concept of neuroplasticity, that we form new neural that we
Neural network.
form new neural networks, new pathways, right? You know, and that we can reframe thought patterns and responses, manage triggers, you know, get through situations, manage our emotions. And it was important to me to start a place where that was the core messaging. You know, that's not all I do in coaching, but,
Mhm.
and I love that you said something about a recipe, because essentially it's each individual person in recovery, when they come to me, we're going to build our specific recipe for their recovery. You know, I'm going to help them add the ingredients that are very specific to them that will help them to get and stay sober. It's
Yeah.
individualized. It's not this is Kate Vitella's coaching plan and it's 1, 2, 3. Here's the magic solution. In fact,
Mhm.
if you hear a coach say they have the magic solution,
They're not
run.
sarcastic. Yeah, and not there is no magic solution. It takes a lot of work and a lot of willpower and mindfulness when you're embracing sobriety. And I like that you were talking about that. A lot of people think when how do I get sober? How do I live a life right sober? Like how do I socialize sober? How do I have friendships sober? Everyone drinks besides me. Now I have to navigate this world. But you're so right in the sense that like when your neurons fire together, they wire together. So you can actually seriously re-up yourself in the sense that you can actually learn how to be the person that you eventually can be. But there are tips, there are little tricks and games that you can play with yourself that will help you, get through this, like those first couple months of sobriety. Um, and that's really cool that you were talking about that because I think a lot of people don't think that like, well, I am just this way and I can't change, right?
Yep.
But you can actually change. You very well can change. It's just a matter of reading about it, getting yourself informed about like what are the neural pathways that I'm triggering me here. It's like a dopamine release. I'm craving motivation and drive, and that is from the dopamine hit from the alcohol itself. And that's a whole other conversation, but it's just fascinating stuff when you talk about that kind of thing when it comes to recovery. Yeah. So, okay, I don't want to take too much of your time. I'm so thankful for you for coming on the Willpower podcast, and I know everyone out there is better for listening to it today with you as my guest. So, before we jump off, is there anything else you wanted to say, and where can people find you?
Yeah, I appreciate coming on. I love podcasting. And I guess what I would say is that in early sobriety for me, podcasts saved my life. Like I went on long walks in my neighborhood with a podcast in my ear all the time, and listening to other people's stories saved my life. And so that's why I continue to guest on podcasts and why I have my own, because I love this forum. And um, I just, I always say stories go where science can't. And that is a quote by, I think, Emily Nagoski from the book Burnout. Regardless, you can find me at Rewired Sober. My podcast is called You've Been Selected. And if you listen, you'd hear my entire story of why I call it that. But I do think I'll probably change the name. Either way, whatever link you put in the show notes will take you to the place I'm creating.
Yeah, we'll take care of that. So don't worry about that. But please, everyone, go check out Kate Vitella. At Kate Vitella is her main page, but now it's at Rewired Sober. Is
Yeah,
that correct?
yeah.
At Rewired Sober. So let's all support Kate. And clearly, she has the information, the wisdom, and the willingness to help you, which is a very great start in your recovery journey. So thank you again, Kate, so much for coming on the Willpower Podcast. And everybody, thank you so much for watching and listening. And please, please, please don't forget to hit subscribe if you haven't yet on my YouTube channel. I do not promote it enough. So please do that if you haven't done so already. And thank you very much, everyone. And we'll be on the lookout for many, many more episodes coming soon. Take care, everybody.